Do you love muddy colors? I know I don't in my watercolor painting. And so today I wanted to share with you 4 tips on how to keep your watercolors vibrant and beautiful and not get muddled within the whole process of painting. So we're going to be painting a mountain scene today, enjoying some landscape. But before that, a little demo on keeping those colors. Mwah! So let's get to it. So one thing I love to do is have 2 water jars, and I'll tell you why. I like to spray down my paints first, of course, before we get to painting. And when you mix together all of the colors, you end up getting that brown, that kind of muddy color, which is not what we want to keep our colors vibrant. But if you were to mix together the primers, so if you have a red and a yellow and a blue, that's going to create some mud. Let's just play with that today since we're chatting about it. So we have some red. I'm going to put my warm color jar, and this will help me to demo this. Yellow, which is beautiful because now we have an orangey thing happening. But when I add in my cool blue, I'll just dab it here. Now all of a sudden I have this mud that's happening. And so let me demo this. I'm having my cool colors, greens, blues, purples. I'm painting with them, and that's really great. When I mix those together, you know, they don't really change the atmosphere of the water. It's gonna be blue or green depending on what I'm using. If I'm using a lot of, you know, red or pink, that's what's happening there. I've got some yellow, right, reds, pinks, yellows, oranges, that kind of thing. So 2 separate ones. We've got my warm colors and my cool colors. If I mix these all together, the mud is what we get. So that's one reason. It may not make the most huge difference in the world, but it does make a difference, especially as you keep painting and things get more concentrated in your jars. So that's like the first and foremost tip, using 2 jars. I don't always use 2, but I do like to, and I see the difference, especially when I'm painting a lot during the day. I'm getting a lot happening here with that water starting to look kind of thick with so much paint that I have been utilizing and painting over and over. So the next thing to keep in mind is this idea of complementary colors. So we've got beautiful colors, and this is just, let's just pretend this is a creative practice for today. I mean, we're not pretending, it actually is. So we've got red, which is a beautiful color, right? The opposite of red on the color wheel is green. Christmas, right? That's what comes to mind. Absolutely beautiful. You enjoy the season. These colors look gorgeous next to each other. But what happens when you mix them together? Taking a clean damp brush, and we just start to mix these together. Uh-oh, now we're getting mud again. All right? So kind of thinking about some of the colors that you want to avoid mixing on your palette, which is why I separate the warms over here with more of the cools over here, so that my mixing spaces aren't really, you know, contaminating each other when it comes to the warm and cool colors. And then of course you have shades and different colors within each color. We have cool reds and warm reds, cool greens and warm greens, and that's a whole nother thing we won't get into today. But for the sake of the lesson, we are just trying to play with those complementary colors. So the next complementary color is opposite of the color wheel, yellow and purple. Beautiful colors. I start to think of, I don't know, some gorgeous flowers and what that looks like. They are very nice together. They help each other kind of pop off the page. They complement, they highlight each other. But what happens when you take the clean, damp brush and you mix them together? You get that mud. Now, what's very interesting is you can take a tiny bit of one of these colors. For example, take your green, and it's very bright. And maybe you want to tone it down and mute it down just a little bit. Take just a little tiny bit, poke in a little bit of red into your green and mix it, and you're going to mute your green a little bit. It's going to have a darker effect, and it's going to be a gorgeous green for your leaves, but you're not going to have mud. What happens is when we're mixing kind of those equal parts of that color, we're starting to get mud. And we'll see how the lighting goes in this video, because I'm seeing it's like someone's dimming a light and then brightening a light out there. I think the clouds are moving over the sun and kind of shifting the light. It is what it is. We still have a video we can still see, so that's a great thing. All right, so the other complementary colors would be the blue. Opposite on the color wheel would be orange. So we're grabbing orange. Look at my water. You can see how those cool and warm colors are playing out in those jars. You can see how important it is to separate. Thinking about the Broncos right there. All right, clean, damp brush. What happens when we mix these? You know the drill. We're getting some mud. But yet, if I were to take my orange, my bright orange, and I just poked in a tiny bit of blue, it would mute it down enough to be more of a natural color, maybe for the fall. That's one reason I love muting my colors slightly for fall paintings. It's just a beautiful thing. So we've kind of talked about the third thing already, which is separating your mixing spaces for these colors. If you have a space like mine where everything just kind of melts together, being able to put on one side, you know, the warms and one side the cools. Over here, this is working, even though I have a purple here and I have this kind of purpley blue. And these are okay to be next to each other because they're not going to make mud. Because purple already has some blue and it has red, and that's what makes purple, right? So we've got the blue here. The problem is when we mix together two colors that happen to have the red, the blue, and the yellow, that's where that mud starts to come in. So with this one, we just have blue, blue and red, so that's totally fine. Mixing two. So it's just a process of playing and enjoying your watercolors and seeing what they do. The other thing is you could do complementary colors kind of building on each other. They're going to slowly, like if you were to do one layer, let me just show you. Let's just do one layer. Let's go with the red. We're going to do a red. I'm not even going to paint anything specific, but just a nice swatch of red here. If I were to pop in some green on top, it's going to make so much mud, right? But if I were to dry this first, and let's go ahead and do that really quickly. Now I take my clean brush and I'm going to get a layer of green, okay? As long as I don't scrub this, I'm gonna dab it real quick. As long as I don't scrub this, the red's gonna stay put. I'm gonna go quickly over this and just add my green over it. And now you can see that I have slightly muted the red. It's a little streaky because I didn't try too hard to blend it. If I were to go over it and just scrub around, we're going to lift that red, which is fine. I didn't put a lot of green, but you can even put more green over the top. It's going to mute it slightly, but it's not going to create that weird kind of neutrally muddy or brown color that you would see when you mix them directly. So the big thing is if you're going to add layers, and especially if they're complementary that could create mud, make sure to dry your first layer and then you can add your second layer. All right, friends, so I've got my pencil here and I've got some tape. Here we go. I'm going to just tape down the borders of this painting. Then we'll just have some nice clean lines, which I really, really love. With a good landscape, love some good clean lines. But maybe you don't, maybe you don't have any tape. So you can just kind of like, you can paint and then just maybe let the paint come up to here and just leave some white space. And it's going to be a little bit more wonky, but just a little more artistic. So it's another option that you could try. Alrighty, so with the landscapes, we do try to keep it loose, but I do the sketch that helps me to just block out where things need to go. So I always start with the horizon line. We're just gonna go with about middle of the page is kind of what I'm thinking. So just quick sketch line across. And then I'm going to do some hills or mountains. Now I'm going to hold it like this. It's going to give me a lot more movement. And that to me is a better look, more natural. So we've got kind of a mountain coming down here and then just like coming back down over there. So maybe we just put a mark here that we're going to add in some of those slopes. And then we want to do another big one over here, kind of bumpy. And then also like a little hill over there. So there's a lot of things happening, a lot of lines, whoops. And then we want to put in this river running through the water or through the grass. Whoa. So we're just gonna let it kind of move and go over this way and then come back over and just like ebb and flow, okay? I said flow, like the water. And over this side too, kind of the same type of thing, you know, just like zigzagging through. There we go. Okay, so something like that. So we've got our basic sketch down, and now we can get into painting, which is so much fun. So I'm going to use my filbert number 12. They're linked in the description if you'd like to check out my brush line. So wetting the brush, and then we're going to start by doing our sky. So the sky in my reference that I made has a lot of just oranges and pinks and things like that. So we'll start with just really grabbing what's on the palette, making sure we remove any hairs, of course, because those don't need to be there. All right, and I don't wet the paper down first before I do this. Just start applying that color. Broad brush strokes back and forth to create a nice, lovely, smooth blend. Okay, adding in some more here. So I want to go past the tape so that you don't just get a line where it stops. Then we're going to grab some pink and then put that in there as well. And going back and forth like this is going to give you those nice blends of those colors. If they start to mix too much, you can add in more color that you're missing. And then the yellow, which is starting to look a little bit orange, and that's okay. It is what it is. We're also going to not be too worried about this because the mountains that we put in will cover up this light color, so it's okay. So back and forth, sweeping motions, kind of to blend that in the best we can. But we're going to keep it loose. And now that you know exactly how to keep your colors vibrant, there's probably a lot more excitement to practice that. Of course, having our cleanish water, you know. I do have one jar today, but you're going to see that my water is going to get a little crazy. It's actually going to probably look more green. So, because we're doing mostly greens and blues in here, which is kind of why I decided, like, I haven't even tainted this jar of water, and that's most of the color that we're doing. We're obviously going to put that color down here too, but anyway, little by little, let's go for it. If you don't like your blend, clean your brush, dab it, go back over and just kind of blend that out. All right, does not have to be perfect. So then really light versions of everything, just going through. Actually, let's lighten that up a little, add some more water. I like that puddly mess. And we're just going to kind of go through here, skipping around. All right, adding in some places where that hair is. Oh my goodness, to get out of here. And I'm leaving the white space because then I can go in with a different color. We're just going to repeat those lovely colors that we did in the sky and add them in very light. Very, very light. These reflections in the water from the sky are just so delicate and dainty. And don't worry too much about where exactly you put in those pencil lines for where the grass is meeting the water, because we can always change that. If we don't like something, we can always extend the grass to come in the borders there. All right, so just a little bit. Just a little movement of the brush. Just gentle, gentle, gentle. Okay, so now I'm going to dry this and then we'll start hitting up our mountains and then our grasses. All right, still using my large brush, I'm going to pick up some of this color here for the background mountains and just going really light as things recede and get farther away. These colors start to get lighter. And they also feel like they are just kind of disappearing into the background. I forgot to add one hill on here. I'd like to just put that in. And then we're good to go with this. So we're starting with that lighter color and just kind of going around here and adding that in. And we're not going to worry about the darker kind of shadowy parts and the crevices right now. Just this is a beautiful color. It's a bluish, very light aqua color, bluish green, and I do tend to prefer that for my background mountains. So putting that in. Okay. And then if you want to, you can swirl around, grab a little more concentrated paint of that color, and you can start just popping in a little bit of shadow over it. It's not the final answer, but I just wanted to start darkening up that line, that edge, so you can start to see the difference between one end and the other. So clean, damp brush, and you can just kind of spread things around. Let's do that on the other side. Just popping in a little bit of color, wet on wet. Oh, that got nice and dark. I like that a lot. So I'm playing around with it right now while it's still wet, just for fun, seeing what kind of marks we can make, how we can get things to stand out. Okay, so we'll leave it like that for now. And then I would like to start adding the grasses as these things are starting to dry. Let me just spread that out there. So with the grass, the first layer, you don't have to get too worried about it. What is it with these hairs today? My goodness. So that first layer is really about placing things, placing colors. And so just running mixes of whatever. I just like to start running my brush around and kind of like we did with the water. And just putting in some of that color, filling it in. Again, very, very light, right? It's that first layer, you're placing things. And you can even do more, darker concentrated colors if you want. And eventually we'll start to put in some darker values. I love doing landscapes because they're just so soothing, just so relaxing, fun things to put together. You're focusing on nature, especially if you're creating something outside, kind of focusing on all the beauty around you, and it's very peaceful. We all need a little extra peace in our lives sometimes, right? Or all the time, I should say. So you see, I just kind of putting in that color that got really intense. You could clean your brush and dab it if you want to. Remove something if it's too much. But just don't overthink it right now. Just kind of covering up the white. And we can do the same type of thing over here. But keeping our values light, or maybe a little medium too, is good. And see how I just move the brush really quickly, back and forth, kind of zigzagging it around, picking up a different green and mixing that into there, and then popping it in. I think we get really worried about that first layer. It doesn't need to be. It's just paint. Just placing things. So if you are feeling stressed in any way, please take a deep breath. Remember, I remind you guys to just relax your body, grab some brown, reminding yourself this is just fun, this is playful, trying something new. Maybe you've never done a landscape. Well, then congratulations, this is new for you. Just literally kind of going in with my gut, I guess. My gut, just like making the lines and things that I feel like doing. So often we paint really slow, and then we give our brain a large amount of time to overthink the process. And so if this is too fast, you can go ahead and pause the video. But let me know in the comments, are you a fast painter or a slow painter? What do you prefer and why? I'm really curious to hear what, people's experiences are like. Okay, so I think that's good for now. We've got that basic color on there, and I do want to put in these hills also. So we're going to go with a sap green for these, and then that lighter yellowy green, just to get a little bit lighter as it goes past, and maybe the light is shining on it in some way. So let's see, we'll start with that one, just the lighter green. I'm putting that in right here. You can see how I'm not being too careful about it, just laying in that color. Take a deep breath if you need to at any point. because this is for you to relax and enjoy putting in that base layer here. This brush works really well, just like a flat wash brush. I usually use a flat brush for my landscapes, but since I have the filbert, I can use her, and it works really, really well. So let your brush just squiggle around, kind of do those little hilly shapes. And remember, first layer. First layer done, no need to worry. I'm even going to take some of that concentrated paint, wet on wet, and just pop that in. It's just fun. Even if we paint over that, you know, I'm just trying to create a difference between these edges and those edges as well. All right, well, let's go ahead and dry this and we'll get to our next layer. So next we're going to start adding in those darker layers, and I think that I'll start with the grass. So I'm actually going to take my quill, and this is equivalent to a 10, and then we're going to start using some of those darker concentrations of color. So kind of really dipping in there, grabbing some more of that dark color there. I'm going to dab my brush because I want to have more control, less water. And you know, if it's runny, then you can't really control what you're doing. So essentially, we're just gonna dab it again. If I get some dry brushing, that will make me happy. But we're just trying to put in, you know, some different lines of color. Just starting here, you can start to kind of go zigzag a little bit. And sometimes I'll make what seems like little hills, you know, just a little bit of a mound of something here. Just kind of putting in some marks. Grabbing some more of that color, dabbing it, coming over here too, just scrubbing back and forth. You know, if you're looking at a landscape and it's far away, you're going to notice blocks of color, not like individual details or anything like that. And so we have to remind ourselves not to be too like stuck on the actual details. I actually want to cut through this and make this a little bit thinner, make this darker. Maybe this is where we put in some darker paint and it's just like kind of the bank going down a little bit. So this whole thing is just starting to put in some color, little thin marks, wherever you want. I can even take off some of that paint and dab it, and then I can create, you know, just add a little extra color here, broadly. Kind of blending things together. Don't want it to be, you know, too like overthought, so going in here. The next time that you are outside, maybe think about painting something outdoors, because it's such a relaxing thing just to observe some things and then try it out. Some things that you see in nature that you want to try to paint. Just looking for those basic shapes, you know? What can you see? Also paying attention to what you can smell, taste if you have snacks, touch and hear if there's, you know, birds or other animals making noises. You can see that I'm just going around darkening up some pieces here and there. I work quickly so I don't overthink it. That works for me. I know it's definitely a learning curve for some, and other people prefer it, so it's kind of based on what you're used to. All right, so adding some more over here. So just don't think about it too much. Just darkening up some spaces, adding a few more marks, maybe some darker values here and there too. And then you can even draw out some more color and start, you know, putting in like little bushes or grasses to darken things up too. So I'm just kind of working quickly all over the place here. Wet on wet, you can pop in some color too. I want to define these places right here. It kind of looks like maybe it goes down and it has some depth right here before it hits the water. And that wouldn't be a bad thing. And if you don't like something, you can always just kind of scrub around it, change something. There's nothing wrong with that. A little bit darker over here. We don't want to make it too varied, so you can always take some water if you need to spread or blend something out. Kind of sit back and see what you like, what's going well right now. I do want to start doing some definition with the mountains back here, so I'm going to take this brush and I'm going to take some darker paint for these guys here, dab the brush, and then just kind of just do a little dabbing here, just kind of adding in those crevices where you're starting to see the mountains have, you know, some definition, some shadow. And, you know, very, very briefly, just a little bit, because these guys are more receded, and so we don't want to do like too much detail, but just a little bit to give some character. And then maybe we take our larger brush and we can take a little bit of that paint, dab it, but add in just like a little bit of extra color here, just to have it stand out. A little extra there. Sometimes we are feeling like we want to add details to everything, and then that just makes things like it's too much at once. I do want to do more dark stuff over here, just like with these original hills, just to define those. So then I will take some of my really, you know, concentrated paints here. Either one, both of them are good options. And I'm going to do that same thing, going over the edge, just little flick marks. And just like dabbing and kind of dashing. And that's going to give it some of those shadows when you have the crevices of your mountains and your hills. And you can even go darker than this too. So I can do some here. Then I can even darken it up a little bit more. But you just want to be like, just kind of start putting those marks down. You don't think about it too much, or else you're going to start to second guess yourself, and then, you know, it can be tough to get away from that. Definitely. So I just sort of doing these diagonal brush strokes to create some difference and some contrast. And then I like to take a little bit more of that green and just pop some of that in, just a little bit, maybe some brown too, in between stuff, just to add some texture in there. And then the one in the back, just a little extra. Not going to do much to it, just a little extra color. Maybe some brown. Let that spread. Like, you just want it to be pretty loose. This one too could have some brown in there. And so if you're letting it spread out, it's going to sort of, you know, work itself out in a way. Spread around and create some color contrast. And then when it's dry, if you want to go back in, you can for another layer. Alrighty, so how are you feeling about your painting so far? Let's keep going with things. I want to do a little bit more of the darkness for the water. So kind of some ripply parts. So a little bit darker pink for example, that I used before. I'm actually going to dab it and then just kind of use the side to just go back and forth and add in some marks. Remember, these are reflections in the water of the sky, and so I don't want to go crazy with it, but I like to have that, you know, the sky represented in the water. I think it's really beautiful. Okay. Very light paint too. I'm not going crazy. Some in the corners here. It doesn't have to be everywhere. And then when you think you're done, you walk away, okay? Allow yourself to be done. All right, so I'm going to dry this and then we'll add to a little bit more detail in the grass. So I like to start with some darker marks in the front for the grasses, so I'm really going bold and dark from the get-go. And I'm just going to do these really quick flick marks to create my little grassy bushes. And I don't want to mess around with like light, medium, and dark. It's just going to take me forever. I'm going to be here all day. And so I'll make this one a little bit more further back. But I like to go from the base and flick up, and that helps just to allow these tips to be really thin. And then you can just do some of this, you know, little grass along the water line. It's always nice to put some of that in there. Of course, as you get too far out, it's going to be so small you won't see it. So let's just do a few here too. And you know, maybe these could be flowers. You could add some flowers to your painting as well. They don't just have to be grass. You could add some buds on there. That would be nice. And then over here, same thing. See, quickly just working that out. And then maybe a few more over here, a little bit less long. So I like to go really dark, and then I don't have to do a bunch of layers. I didn't go dark enough here, and so I'm having to do a bunch of layers, but that's okay. Just a few on here. I think it really pulls it together. I always like to have something like a tree or a bush or a bunch of flowers or something close by, and that's going to give you some nice perspective with your painting and some interest as well. The foreground and the background has things going on. All right, so we're getting close to being done with this. I do want to put a few more darker marks around here. And so grabbing this dark one here with my brush, dabbing it as well. Just a little bit of darkness along the shoreline. I don't know if that's called the shoreline, but anyway, next to the water. Just, yeah, we're always looking for that deep contrast. So how can we get that deep contrast between the light values and then the mid values and then the darkest values? And so it's an experiment to see what's going to work. But if you can go light, medium, and dark, I mean, it's going to do it for you. It's going to help out. And I do want to put some trees. So I'm actually going to do two colors. Let's do this one here, but pretty dark and concentrated, the green gold, and just doing these little stippling marks. It gets really skinny at the top. These are very loose, obviously. They're meant to be loose. This one can be taller than the other. Little bush here. And they're pretty light, but we're going to add in some shadow too, which will kind of even that out, I think. You'll be able to see them a little bit better. If you wanted to, you could just do the dark right away to get that really good contrast. Up to you. You can just do, yeah, dark trees if you wanted. I love stippling. It's such a favorite activity of mine. I use it for so many things with watercolor. All right, so I'm literally going to just dip into this really deep, deep dark color, and I'm going to just tap in, dab in on one side a little darkness. And those colors will start to kind of bloom together and mix a little bit, but that should help with the lights and the darks. And they're far away, so I wouldn't expect the trees to have much of a light look. I don't know, kind of just fading into the background there. And then just a little bit of brown, so swirling my brush, dabbing the brush, and just putting that in several places. So by the tree, I don't know if it's shadow or just the dirt there. Just kind of grounding the trees so they're not just standing there weirdly. They have a purpose, sitting by the grounding, by the shadows. And then I do want to do some of that over here too. So for some little like shadow and whatnot in between here. Just working really quickly. If you're setting an alarm, because that's what I recommend for some landscapes, then, you know, I don't know how long this has taken us. It's definitely not a quick painting, but if we did set an alarm, we would have done this way faster, would have left out lots of detail, and it's just a fun way to paint as well. So clean, damp brush, just doing a little bit of spreading here. Yeah. Figure out what's your favorite painting style and stick with that. I mean, it's so much fun. All right, I just want to take a little bit more of these greens. Just a little bit extra detail. We've got a lot of blobby spots, but we can do some of these little marks too. Dab your brush. This is a little light over here, so I can darken up that part. We're almost done, you guys. I don't know if you've hit the like button for this video, but I just remembered to say it. If you like the video, hit the like, subscribe to the channel. Don't miss out on future videos. We have conversations that have to do with mental health, conversations that have to do with art. We do watercolor painting over here, and we just have a lot of fun together. So I don't want you to miss out. I want you to join us next time. All right, clean, damp brush. Just kind of go over things, and you can blend them, smooth them out a little bit. A little bit of darkness over here wouldn't hurt anyone. A little dry brushing. So you can make it real streaky like this, or you can do less streaky, but that's how mine turned out. Just going to add in a little bit more. Look at that dry brushing. That's cool. Yeah. I mean, I think that we should probably call it quits. I just wanted to put a little extra, you know? It's hard to stop sometimes. All right, so take a look at your painting. If there's anything else you want to add, go for it. If not, take off the tape, which is such a rewarding part. I hope you enjoyed the conversation about keeping your colors vibrant. As you can see, my water just turned green, so no vibrancy issues here with this landscape. Alrighty, friends, I hope you enjoyed painting with me and just a little demonstration on that vibrancy and keeping things so bright and beautiful. And of course, you have to start off with watercolors that are brilliant first, pigmented and lively. You know, some of them are a little dull, and finding those and maintaining that just, for me, brings a lot of joy in my painting experience. Today, friends, I'm also sharing something very exciting, and I'm sharing it first with my Patreons and also my class subscribers. If you're on my email list and you've been joining my courses or my classes, you will get the notice in your email. But also, if you're not part of that, join Patreon. It's free. You also have the option to do the $1, $3, or $5 tier. And so whichever one you choose, that announcement is there. So definitely click on the link and join, sign up. And if not, if you don't want to join Patreon, that's fine. I will be announcing it to the general public later on this week. I have a Monday class coming up tomorrow. So again, another link to click on and sign up for that. But I hope you had so much fun painting today. Happy painting and happy mental health.